Hey guys, welcome to Planet Zoo and to a brand new habitat build. I say brand new, this is actually a rework of the penguin beach habitat that I created right after the Aquatic Pack DLC launched. It's based loosely on the real life London Zoo penguin beach habitat, and since we now have African penguins with the Africa Pack DLC, and London Zoo's Penguin Beach actually houses African penguins, I figured it was a perfect time to do an updated version of this habitat for the African penguins. So why go back and redo the habitat? Well, I was never completely happy with the original that I did. It was okay. There could have been some improvements on it. I really love the concept of making a habitat based on the man-made beach. London Zoo's done this in real life, and I think it is the largest African penguin habitat in the world. It's an amazing feat of engineering the way they've done it, and I am a bit fanatical about great engineering concepts, so I think it's worth a revisit to do it justice. So there's a few significant changes from my previous version. The new enclosure is a lot smaller than the original. The African penguin space requirements are a lot less than the king penguin, so I've reduced the size, mostly by reducing the size of the pool. I think it looks more in proportion with what you'd expect to see now. My last attempt at the pool was probably a little bit overambitious. Something else I've changed is the guest viewing. With my old penguin beach habitat, there was a guest path running all the way around the edge of the enclosure, and I'll admit it didn't look that great. It was very hard lines when you could see this path running all the way around the outside. I don't think that looks great. I think with your habitats, you need to have guest viewing areas dotted about, but don't put them all the way around because it starts to look a bit artificial. The path I did as well, with the levels of the ground changing in this habitat, it made it very fiddly to put in. So I didn't get any complaints or anything, but I imagine anybody that downloaded that habitat on the workshop was probably thinking, could this not have been done in a simpler fashion? And I don't know about for others, but for me, part of the joy of doing these habitats in Planet Zoo is the fact that I get to share them and people get to use them in their zoos. So I am starting to pay attention to how people use these things and trying to make it user-friendly. So with that in mind for this new habitat, what I've done is I've put the viewing area within the enclosure. That means that for the whole build, I'm able to blueprint this as one habitat, and that's way more user-friendly. There's no fiddling with the path or anything. It's simply a line straight up from the habitat gate now, following where the rocks go, rather than having to put your own path in all the way around the enclosure. And we've all been there where you download something from the workshop and the path never goes in the way the original creator has it in. So hopefully now this makes it as simple as possible. The only thing I had was when I moved the path in from around the outside of the enclosure to in the middle of it, I did worry that the rock work that I've put there in place might have looked a little bit overbearing, but the fake rock work from the Aquatic Pack looks really great, so it handles the repetitiveness really well. Actually, that is something to note with this habitat. To build this, I've used the base game, the Africa Pack, and the Aquatic Pack pieces. I did consider limiting the build to base game and Africa Pack only, but you would lose a lot of the character of the build if you were to take out the Aquatic Pack pieces from a build like this. So, for example, the faux rocks are incredibly useful. That and the stained wood, the wall pieces that you get in the stained wood, that's really useful as well. The biggest feature of this habitat is obviously the man-made pool. So having something that looks very obviously manufactured like the rocks, that fits in really well with it as well. Now, if you're wondering why I went to all that effort of making the pool instead of just using, say, the terrain to make a natural beach, the manufactured pool is way more realistic than a natural beach. In real life, hauling tons and tons of sand to make a beach like this, it's just not feasible. Also, keeping the water clean of a pool of this size, that would be horrendous in a real zoo. What's far better, we have amazing architects and engineers coming up with these really wild and wonderful solutions that actually work, they're sustainable, and they're helping our zoos get better. So, like I've said, this build is actually based on London Zoo, and they actually have a penguin pool like this in the zoo. And yeah, it's a man-made pool. So they came up with a design concept that was something that the penguins would feel like a natural environment for them, but also is easy to maintain and run and operate. The other thing is London Zoo, I think, felt an obligation to do something wonderful with their new exhibit, because the old London Zoo penguin pool, the very famous Art Deco pool, there was a problem with that where I think it was something in the material used in the concrete that they realised afterwards was incompatible with the penguins themselves. So they were getting like micro abrasions on their feet and obviously getting very poorly and sick from that, which absolutely you don't want in a zoo. With the new one, they've made something that feels like a beach and it feels like the penguins should live there, and I absolutely love that. It might not be real sand in the pool, but it looks and feels like it, and it's easy for them to keep it clean and maintain. So that's why I've gone for the man-made feel on this one too. I mean, I could have done a natural one and saved myself the 5 or 6 hours it took me to blooming make this pool, but I think it looks good end of the day, so well worth it. You know, I've even added natural implied filtration in the pool. So we've got some natural vents inside the pool here, and I've used the bubble animations to make it look like it's water being filtered through. I've also added an implied water filtration system up top, because I feel like that would definitely be somewhere close to where the pool is, but obviously you need to have that contained in its own area so the penguins aren't getting into it and causing mischief. So that's the pool. Something else quite significant that I changed up in here, I modernised the hard shelter a bit. The previous one was a bit basic compared to what I usually do, and that was because I was originally trying to copy to the letter what London Zoo had, and they've basically got a shed where they house the animals and do the talks and stuff. That's fine and all for a real zoo, but I'm trying to sell something here that I know what I'm doing, that I can make good designs, and I know quite a lot about architectural designs, so I wanted to do a better job with this. So I've switched out that old shed and I've got a much better looking shelter. I've modernised it a bit and given it a little bit more care and attention in the little details. The cool thing about the new shelter is that it incorporates the guest access and the viewing area. So this is now classed as a walkthrough exhibit, whereas before it was classed as a standalone. Guests enter from their habitat gates here, and that brings them out into the guest path within the enclosure. I decided to keep this barricaded off. I mean, I didn't need to because the penguins are classed as being okay with people, hence why we can have a walk-through habitat in the first place. But I always feel like it's a bit more realistic to keep some sort of barrier between guests and the animals. I'm always conscious that it's not programmed into the game, but if you give people free access to walk around, you're going to get people just wandering across the whole of the habitat. Nobody wants that, so here you go, you've got a glass barrier. All the other new additions in this habitat are basically things that I could add because we've now got the Africa pack and the base game update 1.6. So we've now got a lot of these lovely mesh fences everywhere. I am so in love with the mesh fences, I'm using them everywhere. I've also added plants and trees from the Africa pack because the base game pieces that you get for the desert biomes, especially the Africa desert biomes, there's really not that many of them, and it kind of looks a bit sad that there's no trees or anything about in those habitats. So I have added the Africa pieces because we've got some beautiful new trees and plants and bushes and grasses and things that we can use. I particularly love the fever tree. They just look so good. Reason alone for picking up the Africa pack if you haven't already and are considering it. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. This is a new and improved Penguin Beach. You can find it on the Steam Workshop now, and there's a link to that in the description below. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. I think with all of the improvements that I've put into this and how user-friendly it is now, this is probably one of my better blueprints. So fingers crossed it does well. That's it from me, so thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.